Okay, hello. Well, I guess the dog wants to say hello first. Dog is saying hello first. We have to do that first. See? Very adorable. Very nice. Here's the track if you guys haven't heard it already. Most of you here probably have heard it, but I'll drop the link there in the chat in case you're interested. Go give us a follow. Go give us a like. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, do it. Hit the little bell too. I got you. You're a real one. Thank you, C. I appreciate you. If you haven't heard the track, we're about to hear it now. I'm going to play it once through without the mastering on it, and you can hear what it was like before we mastered it. It's not going to be that shockingly different here, but this is called Bloodsucker. It's supposed to be a vocal thing here, but it's actually on the, there's a whole separate track that I put it on because this has been kind of like made smaller, and that needed to be big on top of that. Okay, so that's the whole track, and I'll actually go back here since Klutz, you were saying that you like the background on that part. Appreciate that. It's funny because that's probably my favorite part of this too, is the second chorus. Like if I had to pick a part, I like how that builds. So yeah, let's dig into that real quick. Well, actually, I'll go to the first chorus here. Yeah, okay. So let's mute all the vocals real quick. We can get into the vocals in a second, but just for clarity's sake, we can just hear all the instrumentation. So basic kick. I tried to go more for like, again, the artists I like off of Ed Banger Records, again, Justice or Sebastian. Some of that stuff from like 2010-ish. The kick only happens on 1 and 3, which is interesting. Because it's more or less like a house beat, but I guess it's more along the lines of rock then. Because it's not every 4 beats like most house songs are, where it's just boom, 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 boom the whole time. It's more sparse. But it allows you to have a really big kick if you have that too, because then there's room for the snare to breathe and be loud as well, but then the kick can be huge. So then there's kick, snare, and just a really, like, short, punchy snare. And I think we did layer it with some more, like, noisy elements to it. Just like white noise sort of stuff. And if you listen closely enough, there's actually a little pre-lap on it, as I like to call it. I don't know what other people call it, but like a little sound before the sound sort of thing that kind of sucks into it. And that's for both the kick and the snare. They both have it. This has been bounced to audio, so... yeah, it's called snapback. So anytime... Let's just hear the snare. Is this muted or something? Oh, you know what? You know what it is? I know what it is. I know what it is. I turned off this plugin that's triggering the snare because I didn't want it to eat up CPU. That's what it is. This guy, which is a cool plugin. This is a XO, which I got a little while back. And it has like all of these drum samples from like their whole library. I haven't even loaded my drum library in there, and it tries to kind of arrange them by like their sonic characteristic. So these are all kicks in the red here. So if you found a kick you liked, you could like go through and they pick similar sounds around that sound, which is super neat. This is a really cool tool. I've only just started using it recently. But then I went into snare somewhere and I forget where I did. Was this one of them that I picked? But snares and claps are all kind of in this area. And I like the thing too is like certain frequencies, you know, even though they're technically one thing, like claps or hats or something, like some of them have more of a frequency of like a snare. So like they'll put, what was that, like a cowbell or something? So they'll put that sort of stuff like kind of around this area that's snares, even though these are not really snares, which I think is super neat because we've seen in the past like decade plus people breaking rules with genres and just like snares that don't typically sound like snares. They're more like a piccolo snare, but they're not even a snare. But the point of me bringing this up was more to show you the snapback thing. But see, it's adding this little like sound going into the sound on some of them, depending on where I've set the threshold. So that's kind of a cool thing because I used to have to do that manually, and I did that a lot back in the day, but this one will actually, like, you can set a threshold for, oh, I want this to kind of give a little whoosh into the sound, and it will just put it there depending on what threshold you set for the input signal. Then we just have this snare, kick snare, very simple, and then we've got some bass. And you know what I did? I bounced all the bass to audio because I had quite a lot of bass layering stuff that was going on. So this is just not going to look super interesting, but that's what the bass is. Just a steady eighth note thing. And this originally was going to be more... There's a Sebastian song. I put it on that Bloodsucker playlist on my Spotify. There's a Sebastian song called Walkman that I really like the groove of. And this is essentially kind of more or less trying to emulate that feel. And I had something that was more like straight up that sound, and it just wasn't working quite as well in the mix. So I actually ended up using Synplant, thing that will take any input sound and kind of try and find a sonic double of it. We did that with this tune that I'm working on called In the Red, and we got this cool bass patch out of it. So this is like part of the bass sound that... that we ended up going with, but it's layered with a bunch of other stuff here to get the end result, which is a little more thick. Okay, so that's like the basic rhythm section, and then we have guitars. We'll just listen to the guitars real quick. And like really harsh cutting off of the guitars, because I wanted it to sound like guitars, but just done way more in like a sampling sort of form, more electronic sounding, so everything's very like cut off. And we've got two guitars playing here. We got, of course I'm hearing this mono. I don't know why I'm hearing this mono. They should be left and right, but I'm hearing it mono for some reason. But it's two different takes of playing so that we're not getting any weird phasing issues or whatever. Lots of plugins, again, as usual. There's Air Windows, which is my favorite, like, new tape saturation, old analog outboard emulation sort of plugin, which is cool. But altogether, the drums, the guitar, and the bass, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the production on Tom Petty, Full Moon Fever, that record, which has got a little more synthetic sort of edge to it, which I like. It's different. There's a couple tracks on there that have this just kind of like very punchy but easygoing sort of rock sound to it. And then this is, we'll get into the organ in a second here, but this is the organ that actually started the tune, how I started writing this tune. I believe it's just a particular saw wave I like the sound of. And for the chorus, we treated it with a little bit of a tremolo that would kind of duck it rhythmically. So that's what this is like. Kind of heard a bit of Queen production sound there as well. Yeah, I could see that too. It's super simple rhythmically. Oh, and then there's little hits here too. To me, you don't even really hear this organ part that much, like, in a definite way. And of course you can hear I put like a little bit of like reverb, and I think a slight bit of delay on those hits, just to give them kind of some more punch. You don't really hear the organ as much as I kind of initially envisioned having them be on this track. I wanted them to be more of a focal point, and they ended up just like clashing with everything in the mix, so they're kind of low compared to like earlier demos of me working on this. But the intro part, which I'll play in a second here, is kind of what spawned the whole fucking thing. So then that with the guitar. So then it's got that even more pulse with the guitar. And then with the bass. And then we can kind of hear it all together. So yeah, let me go to the intro. I do want to get into that high-pitched sound, because honestly, that's one of my favorite things in this whole song. And once I show you why, you'll kind of get it, because it's pretty awesome. But I'll save that for a second later. Let's go over to the intro organ. Okay, yeah. So this is the organ part that spawned everything. Because I was like, this just sounds to me. What it sounds like to me is it sounds like. Was it Super Mario World or one of the SNES ones? It's got this like grainy, almost 8-bit quality to it. And it sounds like any of those levels that you would get on where you're like on the ship going to see either Bowser or one of his cousins or whatever the fuck they were. And it's got that like just dissonant boss music sort of thing going on with it. So that's what this part is. It's kind of fading there to make room for other stuff that comes in. So initially I wanted this to be like a much more prevalent sounding part, and there's a couple demos I have of it sounding like way more up front, and it's cool sounding like that. But once I added other instruments in, it just ate up too much of the frequency spectrum, so it's kind of lower in there and just gives more of a vibe now. But the guitar is kind of mirroring the organ part as well, and it's got the da-da-da-dum. It's got that little turnaround thing. So that's this. And there's a kind of a squealy thing that the guitar is doing there. It's not a pinch harmonic. It sounds like it's a pinch harmonic, but that guitar, I'm not going to plug it in, but I'll just grab it for visual reference. So this Silvertone guitar has this interesting layout of the strings. And if you pluck back here, and you happen to be fretting over here, even though it's past the bridge, it kind of gives this weird, like, dissonant overtone quality to whatever note you're playing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that was one of those where I was playing it and I was just fucking around seeing what sort of textural quality I could get out of the thing. Immediately I hit that and I was like, okay, yeah, that has to be in there, because if it makes me go like, then that's usually a good sign, you know? If you make the face, then you did something right, you know? Oh yeah, and I want to check out that Mario Brothers airship theme. We'll check it out. Because I actually haven't gone back to listen, so hopefully this isn't like blatant plagiarism or anything. I haven't gone back to listen to this, but I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Andy. Let's see. Yeah. This has got definitely like with the percussion, it's got a Mars Holst sort of feel to it. This is totally what I was thinking of, though. So, Super Mario Brothers 3, okay. So yeah, I don't know why this translated into vampires for me, but it felt ominous and has a little suspense. Yours has tension. Yeah, there's just like something about just doing minor chords for everything just immediately makes everything evil. If you just switch all of the chords that you're playing around with the minor, eventually you get something kind of spooky sounding. I don't have this organ sound queued up. I could kind of try and approximate something just so I can illustrate what I'm talking about, but I'll just bring up ES2. I don't quite remember because it's on a different computer exactly what I used for it, but it probably was one of these ES2 synths. Let's see if I can get a sound out of this. It probably wasn't that high up. That's one option. Full brightness. That's close enough, I think. But then, yeah, we would just have... Of course, this probably is going to be super latent, so it's going to sound like shit when I try and play it, but... That's the basic idea, is that we got, like, perfect force. The dog woke up and came running across the yard for that sound. It's funny how, like, very specific waveforms will do that to animals. I noticed that. So it's got this very, like, it's not a church organ. I almost thought about replacing it with a church organ, but we just ended up kind of going with a more, like, video game 8-bit sort of sound, which I ended up kind of liking for this. Okay, so this is labeled Mr. Brown bass. Why is it labeled Mr. Brown? So we've got this organ part, right? And then it's got those very specific hits at the end. So then we layered that with this. So very, like, it just, to me, it just reminded me of, like, something like knocking on a door or a plank of wood or something. But it sounded kind of evil, and I liked that, because that's what we were going for, right? And of course we, like, made this exaggerated curve in the EQ to just accentuate that kind of woody timbre. It's a very woody sound. Yes, very ominous. Yes, exactly. But the reason, again, it's called Mr. Brown bass is because this was, again, Synplant, which, if I'll remind you, is you take in any audio file and it will try and replicate it. This was originally started out as a Bob Marley sample from an old Studio One track of Bob Marley called Mr. Brown. And it has been significantly tweaked from that, but that was the kind of bass template. It doesn't sound anything like the bass in Mr. Brown now, because my nature is to just tweak with things until I get something that I want. But it had the basic timbre of what I wanted, something kind of buzzy. Let me just grab another iteration of that, because I did save, like, a lot of iterations of each particular sound. So that's one option of this particular. I don't even know if I could. That's more or less the sort of part that they play in that song. Probably in a different key or whatever. I'm just kind of, like, paraphrasing right now. But the cool thing is, like, now it sounds nothing like that bass. It's got its own, like, tonal characteristic. We backed off of the decay of the sound, so it's just, like, really quick. It doesn't stick around very long. And then, you know, eventually, once we bounced that to audio, we got this very plunky sound. It's gonna freeze up on me. Yeah. So that's been the coolest part about Synplant to me, is, like, not using it in a way to just, like, exactly ape a particular sound, but to get something that's, like, close tonally, but then make it and transform it into something that is not the thing. Okay, so yeah, we'll go over to the second chorus, but Klutz was talking about this second chorus, and I agree this is a cool part here. Okay, so second chorus here, if I take the vocals out, this is what we got. So again, things get like really cut off for the hits, just to make them super punchy. We still have the bass, guitar, and drums backing from before. We got that little whistly thing on the top. Kind of gives it, for lack of a better term, it's got like a disco sort of thing to it. The little whistly part, which we'll get into in a second here. So what's giving a lot of the rising quality to this is we've got the choir from before. If you remember, the song starts out with this choir, right? Which is a combo of the Hollywood choirs plugin from East West and my demo vocals. So it's my voice and a bunch of other voices and stuff. But the cool thing with this is that having it at the intro here out of context, it almost sounds like it's a whole nother part. It's really just the chorus. Like, again, it just sounds like it's like an old sample of whatever, all lo-fi and shitty at the beginning. But it's just a part from the chorus out of context. So we have essentially chorus, even though it's just an intro. Then we've got that kind of riffy organ part, then verse, then chorus, then verse, then chorus. There's a bridge. It sounds like there's a lot more parts than there are. Even the bridge is kind of just aping a lot of shit that's happening in the verses. So that's cool. It's just like recontextualizing the same information you've already been getting for the rest of the song without trying to give you too many more parts, just kind of mishmashing them in a different arrangement. So the chorus is absent for like the majority of the first third to 2/3 of the song, and then when the second chorus kicks in, that's what's giving a lot of the rising quality, is that this choir part is being gradually filtered in. Lots of volume automation to make sure it's present enough as it's doing this, but we have the DJM filter. Where's that? The DJM filter knob, which I could just go into an EQ and put a filter and do this. And we could just fade it in slowly. I could do that, but for some reason, even if I go in and I put like a really steep resonance curve to it, it just doesn't have the right sort of quality as like having like a DJ controller or having like this, the loop station that I have here. Even that filter just has a particular quality to it, a particular sound to it, and this just doesn't cut it for some reason. I don't know why. I keep messing with it. I've been messing with that for years, and it works in a pinch, but it's not quite the right sound. So recently I found this. It's a free plugin. It's called DJM by Xfer, and it totally has that same sort of thing where you can go between low pass and high pass in a flash. So we automated this to be opening as the choir is playing. So that's what this sounds like. But that's what's kind of giving the rising quality. And then the other thing too that's kind of giving it more of that flavor of like, I don't know, some of the old Castlevania games I loved and stuff, that kind of 8-bit, kind of downgraded bit crush thing. There is a bit crusher somewhere on it. There it is. So this is bus 46. So then on here, there's a bit crusher doing this, and then it switches over to this one. So that's how anal retentive I am with this stuff, is like, not only is it being bit crushed, but there's a separate bit crush settings for when it's more in the back. And then as it's kind of like blooming outwardly, there's another one that's more exaggerated, and there's a cutoff between both of them where one's on and the other one's off, and then vice versa. But let's see what else is going on here. To add back to the so these are violins from the Spitfire chamber strings. I fucking love this string library, but it is very processor intensive, and it will just cause Logic to lock up. So that's why this is bounced to audio. Here's the original MIDI part. Which a lot of these things we do play out by hand. Like I did actually play that on here, and that's why there's like the differences in velocity and stuff. It's not just all like one line. We try and have it sound as human as possible. But then again, this violin in second chorus is different from the later violins if I play those. You hear the sound difference, the sound quality? So that's a little more brighter to help it stick out in the mix, but it's also not downgraded. Like, this is deliberately downgraded with a bit crusher, which I believe was being done with Shaper Box here. Yes. So again, that's like to pair with the fact that we've got the choir being bit crushed as well to give that kind of retro video game sort of feel. Just kind of ties all that together. And everything cuts off really sharply to make way for little vocal tagline at the end, vocal hook, and then get into the next section. But let me get into the little whistly part that comes in throughout, because I think that's a really neat thing. If nothing else, I wanted to do this just for that little part. Let me go back to the beginning. Okay, so... you can hear it really faintly in the background. So throughout the song, there's little parts here and there of like little sound effects drops. In the music video, there's bat sound effects, which I have here as well, which I sourced from various YouTube videos and stuff. It was a bitch to find the right sort of timbre of bat. I spent so much time on finding these fucking bat samples, and then I didn't even put them in the like track that you hear on Spotify. It's just in the video for like the creative transition effects and stuff. But those are in there, but there's also some screaming. I don't know if that was apparent enough. There's these female screams that I got off of Splice, and where is that? Screams and gas. Let's see. So that's going from the post chorus 1 into verse 2. So that happens once going into verse 2 and then out of verse 2 into the chorus. Pitched a little bit differently. Sorry if I gave everybody a fright there. It's kind of loud. I mean, that's the whole point of this, but still. I think this is a layer of 2 different screams, if I'm not mistaken. With all the delay on there and stuff. And then there's one over here as well. Is this a longer, more sustained one, but then together? With all the fun delay and stuff. And then we get this. So the reason I'm focusing on this so much right now is I was just kind of experimenting and fucking around, and I was using that Shaper Box, I think. Where's Shaper Box? Yeah, I think this was the track that I did it on. Let's see. I just put this scream down, and then we were messing around with more like time-based effects and sequences, and let's see. I have like several different instances of Shaper Box. Don't do this. Don't do this. This is insanity. I'm making my computer cry with how many instances of this super resource intensive plugin there are. I had like different settings that I was going through and just listening to what it would do to this scream. So that's one option, and then I just went through and like, okay, that was pretty cool. What about this one? What about this one? It's got like a reverse quality to it. And then... so I think that was one of the ones that I like spliced together, but it's a combo of 2 of these plugins is the point of this. There we go. That's the one. It's got it almost has like a square wave quality to the like the hit at the end. Like not Tainted Love, I don't think is what I'm thinking of, like the Soft Cell Tainted Love cover, but like that sort of like boo. It's got like a weird quality to it. Boo. So basically I bounced all of those options to audio, and then we went through, and you can see there's like kind of this crude splicing that's going on here of the different iterations of that. I was like, I liked qualities of one, but not the other. I was like, oh, this one started really good, but then it ended not so great. So we ended up putting a master compilation of that together. But that whistly sound over the top that like kind of takes the place of like a disco guitar or like string drone or something that you'd hear in like a disco track or house track or something is actually a woman screaming, just heavily processed. And that comes up throughout. And then if you listen, it does change later slightly. Let's see. So here's the sound again. So you don't even notice that it's a scream when you're hearing it. It just sounds like this cool synth part over the top. But it's it's subtly adding more terror to the track, right? But the neat part is when we go to second chorus, again, another reason I like the second chorus, like in the sound of it, is because we changed up the rhythm there. So for second chorus, we have it come in. So you hear the rhythm change. It's got more of a steady pulse. Everything. We'll go back. Sounds a little like a whale combined with sonar ping. Yeah, it's almost got the echoes thing going on with the sonar ping. That's true. That's very true with that whistly part. Okay, so the bridge is kind of fun too because again, it's more or less just using the same samples from the verse, just kind of treating it more in a I hate to say it like complextro, because the song is obviously not a complextro song, but it's more or less like pulling from that sort of 2008 to 2010 era of electronic music I liked listening to, where there's lots of like little chops and things. So for instance, there's like this. Well, It's kind of obnoxious to hear on its own, but there's if you just listen to the vocal on its own, it's just chopping the end of that babe sound off. So there's.
Ooh, I'm just a bloodsucker, babe. Babe. Babe.
It's getting more bit crush as time goes on too. So that's a cool detail. It's like every time it comes around, it gets a little more fucked up sounding. But if I mute that and I just go with the other parts, let's see. So the fun little fill here, again, a lot of this is just Sebastian worship. I just fucking love that artist. And he does a lot of stuff at the end of like a 4-beat phrase where he'll have like a group of 16th notes that are just chops of like a master audio file. So you get all of like the weird panning and mix decisions of whatever this master audio file is with like no separation or anything. And he just kind of like, blah! There's just like a little mini collage of different instrumentation happening all at once, but very like structured. It's just like an auditory collage to me is what I would call it. Where's the one I ended up going with? Was it this one? I think it's this one. So that's the one I ended up going with. But we did 8 different takes of this, and what it is I actually went here and we took whatever demo. This was version 55. We did a bunch of random cuts to the beat, but I tried to offset it so it wasn't like just beats 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. You just had it be like an offset of, I think, what did I do? Like the and of 2, and then we cut things at equal intervals there so that I wouldn't just be getting downbeats and whatever else when I resampled this. So that's what's going into this sampler here. So that was one option, and we could go through and kind of like audition them. If I listen them in the track, that was 8. I ended up going with 8, but there were quite a few of them that I'm like, ah, man, that would be cool too, but this one just had a particular quality I liked. Here's the other options. Here's what we went with first. Here's the 10th recording of that. Ninth, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd. Oh, that was cool. 2nd. The second one, so the second one is all of like the organ and the bats. So that's why it sounds like that, if that's what you're asking about. Which I was like, that would be cool, but it just, the more I listened to it, I was like, not that one. And there's just like fun stuff, like you can hear like different parts of like the breath of like the vocal take or whatever. Anything that's like slightly messy, I just love that sort of stuff where it's like there's a human element in it. Because this is something that's very obviously like very electronically processed, but at the same time, if it can like highlight parts that are human within that, then it becomes something cool, you know? Oh, and see, it's got the scream in there at the end of this one. Okay, so yeah, the vocal, you heard the good catch, Klutz. So you caught the vocal coming in there. So not only is there this part 8 here, which we'll hear just on its own. If you notice, you don't hear it there. So I wanted there to be at the very end of it, the very end of those 16th notes, for there to be a vocal part. So then I added, I think this, I'm guessing is what that is. So that comes from, you know what I'll do is I'll just bring this out and then you can hear the rest of the sample. So it's just a microsecond of a sample, but if we play the rest of it, hopefully it'll let me play more. So it's the just how slowly you bleed from the first verse. So again, it's all samples from the song, but it's that particular moment. So it's the build up into the first chorus here. I'll go to where that's at in the song anyways. That's what that is. It's just that little part there. So if you wanted to get technical, it's just. But it's not important. It's just that it has like a, you know, human vocal coming in. Sounds like a squid being slurped through a vacuum cleaner? Exactly. Well, it's better than just toilet noise, which is what I'm pretty sure every Gen X and Boomer person thought dubstep sounded like. Wasn't that was a whole South Park episode, wasn't it? The one where he's getting older. Stan's getting older. And everything sounds like poop noises to him. Steamy Ray Vaughan just shits his britches, yeah. The guy sitting at the bar is like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. Oh yeah, and there's a fun little tape stop effect at the end of all that bridge stuff. Very 2009. So then we'll go over, there's some other neat stuff here in the, I'll just call it outro chorus buildup. Let's call it that. So let's get into what's happening here. So we got the scream glitch again. That's going on still. But just a little underrated technique. If you have sections of the song that you want to give more impact to an upcoming section, like I wanted this, you know, last chorus to just explode, right? What you can do is I've automated the frequency of the master bus. I've got a Pro Q EQ on here, and I forget which one it is. Is it this one? So you can even see visually what I'm about to do. All of the low end and like bass and stuff, I've put a significant amount of reduction of the bass on, and same thing with the highs. So it kind of like boxes in the sound. You could go more extreme with this. This is just what worked for this track, but you can kind of make it so it's more narrow in the amount of frequencies it's putting out, and then you can just kind of open it up for the end of whatever to just have something just, because then you're getting all those frequencies back you lost. So I have this like really drastic effect of the tape stop happening. Almost sounds like the track stops there, right? And then we have this really like subdued build-up section. So it's much more smaller frequencies. Smaller frequency range, I mean. And as it builds, then we're going to see this open up. And then the same thing with the high frequency here. You can see there's automation for that as well. So that's gradually, slowly opening up there. I went a lot less drastic than I normally do with this sort of thing. I think I've done this on quite a few tunes. Is that the way that you want it? I did that for the second verse, I think. I did the same sort of thing, and it's much more drastic there. But it's the same sort of idea. You're just making something smaller to give the illusion that whatever's coming back in next is huge, when in reality you've had that the whole time. It's just that this one section is smaller for a moment. And then we also had the entrance. We've got a church bell that's in there. So in context. And there was one of these that I tried out. I was talking to Andy about. One of them has like the Nick Cave red right hand. It's got the timbre. I don't know which one of these it is, but it didn't work in the mix. I was so bummed because I kept trying to make it work. I kept trying to EQ it, and it just, I think things that are like mallet percussion that are like bell-like, they don't quite play nice a lot of the time when you try and make them sit in something. It's either they're too fucking loud or they're not loud enough, and I can't tell what's happening, and it's very hard to balance them. Oh, that's it. Yeah, listen to it. It's just got a particular quality. It just reminded me of Red Right Hand a lot, and I was like, oh, that's a good one, but it would not play nice in the mix. It just, timbre-wise, it just had this cool quality to it. I'm like, oh, that feels like it should be the one, but then I'll put it in something else. This one's got more of a Daft Punk aerodynamic, AC/DC Hell's Bells sort of church bell thing going on to it. It is a nice sound, though. So, and then another cool thing with this is I've just labeled these acoustic samples, but they're a little bit more than that. So this is one of the layers that's happening there. It's kind of a sample chop, and I'll show you where I got it in a second. So this is a product of my inherent laziness, which ended up being about as much work as if I had decided to not be physically lazy. So because I didn't want to set up a mic and walk the, 4 feet to the guitars over there, and I wanted to remain sedentary and increase my risk of a heart attack, I decided I would just browse on my computer. I was like, I want an acoustic guitar. I don't want to sit and play the acoustic guitar right this second, though. Can I just throw something in as like a placeholder? Fucking lazy. Fucking lazy. But what this is here is... This is another tune of mine called Flowers to Your Grave from the Black Familiar record. And we're chopping up like chords that I thought would work well from that. So this is the sample. So that's just one of the hits from it, but in context, then we've got... Maybe that's more edited than I was thinking it was going to be, but it is from that particular song. Let me see if there's another thing that's less edited. I might not have it in this project file, because I think I did do like a compilation of the different ways that I chopped this up and did kind of like, not a stutter edit, but almost kind of similar. Basically, those are all chopped from another tune and pitch shifted to match the chords. That's what's making up this whole loop section here. And there's actually there's one pan left and one pan right, and they kind of both have different qualities. So this is the right channel. And then there's the left channel. And then together, which to me, this kind of sounds a little Gorillaz-y to me, this whole section with this going on. You can add the scream back in there. And the bell. And then what continues on into the big last chorus too is some more self-sampling. We've got a count in that I took from another tune of mine called No Time, and we used some drums from that. So it's very low in the mix, but it is in there. There's this little count in here. Which has been... It's in there, but it's really low in the mix, just to kind of give the feeling of like some of those like old Motown records where you'll hear like the band kind of getting together or whatever. Even some of like the old Bob Marley records, it's like there's just like stuff happening that's chatter amongst the band, and they're like communicating with each other. Sometimes, it's like it's more nonverbal visual cues that you'll do to like communicate with band members, but I like that sort of energy. What's the fucking... There's a Motown thing I'm thinking of right now. Smokey Robinson. Smokey Robinson. There's a one of his, it's either Tears of a Clown or Mickey's Monkey or something like that. There's just like a lot of like conversing back and forth in the intro, and I just like that sort of energy, and I kind of wanted to have that here, even though I'm just one dude making this. So there's that part from this particular recording. Talking to yourself, yeah. And then what's been going on too that leads into this last chorus is there's that tambourine. That's also from the same track, No Time. Again, it's really like heavily cued so that there's not like a bunch of low end coming in. But it's kind of got that paint it black sort of drum, propulsive drum thing going on. And that's layered with drums from Betrayed as well, because Betrayed does a similar thing with the outro. Apparently this is just becoming my thing now, is just to switch the kick and the snare to their inverse. So snares on all the 1, 2, 3, 4 strong beats, and then kicks on the weak beats, the off beats. But then we have that layered with the drums from Betrayed. So that's what those drums sound like on their own. And that cuts off for the last hit. But it was a weird thing in my mind where I was like, do I want to do the whole big Motown ending? Probably not. It'd probably be in bad taste. But then the more I just was like, all right, we'll just like put it on there, see how it feels. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then before I know it, it's like however many versions. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to change it now. So this just kind of stuck, which sounds kind of insane to be putting that with the rest of this, which is very like electro rock. And then we have something that is very much like an old fucking sort of style of doing things. Should have just turned the volume down and faded out. Klutz. All right, Klutz. My biggest dissenter. Strings back in again. This sounds big. There's like little ad-lib fills and stuff. Lots of like breaths and whatever, just to give it as much personality. Oh, cool thing with the vocal before I get too far out of here. I did the vocal on this one a lot differently than I've done them before. Breaths are great. Yeah, I agree. Breaths are indeed great. Oh, breaths. Okay, cool. Yeah, right. Breaths are good. I brought up Sebastian like fucking 10 times. I know, shut me up. But he has a remix he did for a group called The Editors. I think the song's called Camera. And it's like he went through the vocal and he went and chopped out all of like the unflattering stuff, like all of the breaths and stuff, and then he chops it up and makes like a groove out of the breaths, and it's kind of unsettling, but it also is cool, at least to me. But I love that, again, it's that intersection of something that is heavily electronic because you're inherently chopping something up in a computer and rearranging it. So it automatically already has an electronic feel to it, but then it's something that's so very like human. And I love that intersection, especially like any electronic tunes that will use like ethnic instruments, but they'll like glitch them out and stuff. So you get this like weird quality of something that's not a plugin that has this inherent quirks and characteristics, like, you know, maybe a fret isn't leveled properly, so it has this buzzy quality to it, or the way a sitar has its own characteristic for that acoustic instrument. It's just interesting to me when you combine that with chopping things in a modern way. So anyways, real quick before I move on to the next thing here, the vocal has a cool thing because I haven't done vocals like this before. Usually when you do a vocal, depending on what the song needs, if it's not like super intimate, like acoustic, and it just requires that you need one voice and it has to be just performed really well, a lot of people will double track, if you're not familiar with that term, where they just record another pass of the vocals and they mix them together, and it gives it a lot more full sort of sound. Just generally it sounds more sexy to have a double track than to not. The Beatles doing that back in the day, all of those vocals sound super full because of that technique, right? And it's kind of a mainstay, but this time I actually triple tracked things, but I did it in a more subtle way, in that there's a main vocal. I'll just play all the vocals together alone. Naked and vulnerable. So here's all the vocals combined.
Here we go. I'm not your lover, I'm not your friend. I'm in the shadows, I'll play pretend. The only thing that I'll ever need is to rip your heart out and watch just how slowly you bleed.
So that's what they sound like all together. Here's just the main vocal.
I'm not your lover,
This is fine.
I'm not your friend. I'm in the shadows, I'll play pretend. The only thing that...
Oh, and I cut in some other ones because I liked this particular passage better.
The only thing that I'll ever need is...
So these are actually ducking these out of the way, which wasn't supposed to be a ongoing thing, but that's just what we did.
The only thing that I'll ever need is...
So the needle's going there because it's cutting. It's basically more or less cutting these out in hopefully more of a natural sounding way, because I wasn't as crazy about those recordings. So that's just that on its own. That's just the main vocal on its own. But there's this filtered set of two vocals that are panned hard left and hard right. So those on their own, again with some pretty drastic filtering, just those alone sound like this.
I'm not your lover, I'm not your friend.
So all the highs have been removed. All the stuff that would make it like super intelligible and like all the consonant sounds are kind of lessened, right? Or just cut off.
I'll play pretend. The only thing that I'll ever need is...
And they're not...
to rip your heart out and watch just how slowly you bleed.
They're not delivered in like a super intense way. Like if you heard the main vocal there, it gets way more animated. I leaned into that part more.
To rip your heart out and watch just how slowly you bleed.
Because the purpose of these is not really to detract from this, but to just add body to it. So that's all we're doing here, is just, that's why it's like more mid-range, is we've mixed those in to just complement the main vocal and kind of beef it up a little bit.
I'm not your friend.
So here's the left on its own.
I'll play pretend. The only thing that I'll ever need is to rip your heart out and watch just how slowly you bleed.
And there's, I forget what's giving it kind of the weird like snare buzzy quality, but there was something else I added that just kind of felt like it added some grit to it. It's a little annoying to listen to on its own, but it's cool in the mix. So that was left, and then here's right.
I'm not your lover.
And these are not perfect. They're like,
In the shadows,
they've got rough edges, but together it all kind of works.
the only thing that I'll ever need is to rip your heart out and watch just how slowly you bleed.
Together.
And at the end of the day, I'm just a bloodsucker, babe.
With the main vocal.
6 feet down in the grave. Ooh, I'm just a bloodsucker, babe.
It's a little, there's even parts that are a little pitchy, but it's just part of the feel. Some of them linger a little longer than others. Some of them don't.
Oh, let me talk to you. I know you love it. Let's not pretend. Your heart is beating inside your neck. A little pressure.
Okay.
It's all I need. And you're hypnotized, and you know my love in his teeth.
And that's another thing I haven't really done in tracks before, is just like lots of little ad-libs. I kind of like the thought of it. It's not what I usually do. It kind of leans more in a pop direction to do those sort of things, but I think it's fun. Like on the next track I've got coming out, the intro has the turn it up. Like the fucking Sweet Home Alabama. I just think that's hilarious. It's so like unnecessary, but it just puts you in the like vocal booth with the person, you know? Turn it up. Hell yeah. It just adds character, so that's what we're doing here. But I wanted to get to another little sound effect thing because I think it's kind of funny. So after there it is. So I wasn't sure how I was going to arrange these at first, but there's a clap thing, which is sampled from a remix I did a long time ago for Castlevania, of all things. There's a Vampire Killer remix that I did under the alias King Kuula. Yes, I know, it's stupid. There's a particular clap I used in that I couldn't be bothered to find in my sample pack and re-EQ the same way. I was just like, I'm just going to stem split this and grab it. So that's what this is. I'll find it real quick, just so you can see what I'm talking about. So that clap there we resampled. I think it was specifically the one coming up with the big verb on it. This one. Anyways, so we sampled that little clap there, and this comes up twice in the song. It comes up in the bridge, and it comes up in the bridge, and it comes up here after a little pressure is the line, I think. Obviously, like, fixed time-wise to fit the track. And then that comes up here again later in the bridge. In between that, I couldn't decide whether I was going to put that here or if I was going to put it after a little pressure, but there's the amount of time I spent on this one fucking sound is ridiculous, because it was like I had to get the right fucking sample for this. Gasp sample combo, that's what it is. So this section right here. Your heart is beating inside your neck. It's really stupid, but yeah, here's the sound. Okay, so the reason this took so fucking long is I wanted it to have the right sort of timbre, and to find a gasp, or as I've labeled them, gasp/moan that wasn't like X-rated in a way that I was like, I would like hate it later. It was a delicate balance. So here, let's listen. As the last thing we'll do here, we're going to listen to all the gasp moan combinations that we went through to get to this one, which I think sounds a little bit more Victorian era adjacent, which is what I wanted. I wanted to be like classic horror, not like, oh. So not the Elden Ring female character dying. Yes, exactly. I literally made a list of like, no, too X-rated. Oh, that one's all right, but it kind of got a little sexual at the end. Like, it probably would have been fine, but I just didn't want that. It just, at some point, some of them were just too much. So here's... So that's the one we went with. Let's see what the other ones were. Option 4. So it's like, that's some good mid-range. Okay, that's all right. That one, too much. See, that one's too much. And then what was the other ones? I can barely tell that one. See, and some of them were just like they didn't work in the mix. It's like, this is too delicate. That one was just kind of milquetoast. Nope. Okay, so that one didn't work. Oh, that was supposed to be in the mix with this one. Excuse me. Nope, didn't work. 2x rated. 2x rated. See what I mean? This took me fucking, like, I swear to God, this took me, like, arranging everything and doing this, like, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours to fucking figure out the right combo. Because... No. No. You get the bonk, exactly. I'm kind of mortified doing this right now. I swear I got these from a sample pack, okay? These were sourced ethically. So anyways, that concludes that. But we figured it out. Eventually we figured it out. We got the right one. So your voice samples don't lie? See, that's what I wanted. I wanted, like, a surprise gasp, and, like, trying to get that specific fucking thing from sample packs was... And it's two voices, too. So it's like one of my exes, to be honest. I did not need to know that. I did not need to have that image! Father! And then, yeah, we have the final product with everything. One last thing. We won't end on the moan, sorry. I'm gonna just break this down even more for just a second. There's also that 303 baseline thing that comes in for, like, the riff thing. So pretty. Good job. Nice braids. You stay right here while I do this. There's this little TR-303, I'm thinking. This guy... Which is kind of a weird noise to put in there, but it's like that sort of, again, we watched Blade the other night, movie night, that, like, acid 90s bass sound, which is not really even a bass, it's just a cool synth sound. So that's a fun little thing, because that's going on in there too. That comes up a couple times. Yeah, propeller heads sort of synth, yeah, totally. Which apparently the guy who made the, I think it's the Roland TR-303? TB-303, excuse me. TB, this guy. You would sequence out the bass lines with this, and then you'd fuck with the resonance knob, and you get all this cool, fun, like, instant retro 90s nostalgia. But the guy who made it did not intend for it to be used the way it was, and he, like, has kind of hated the fact that it's been used in that fashion, and it's basically known for that. It wasn't supposed to be like this at all, but it's like, it didn't sound like a bass, so I don't know what he was expecting people to want to do with it. But that's what that sound is supposed to be going for. Point of me bringing that up is that this sound not only is there for, like, the riff and everything, but it's also there for the verse too. It's just very sparse. So that's, like, I try to have, like, new elements come in when there's, like, a new verse, so it's not, like, getting super stale and repetitive. I mean, it's repetitive, but it's also, like, you have to have something new, like, ear candy-wise to come in. So there's just a little offbeat of that. So that's just low in the mix, but it's in there. That's another fun little part that's in there, just a small detail. Anyways, that's about that. I think I've gone over most of the stuff that most people would find interesting, so I'm going to close out on that. We're going to do some gaming. Thank you for tuning in for this, saying hello. Say hi to YouTube. Hello, YouTube. And we'll check you in just a moment here after the break. Bye for now.